Good morning, Lockbox Lunatics watchers. I appreciate you showing up today. I'm Chad Kamp, exit Realty Coannah. My cohort over here, Mr. Steve Lambert out of Washington.
Hello.
Hello.
Our YouTube watchers, it sounds like they're stalkers or something weird, like YouTube watchers, like
Well, you know,
watchers. Do we have watchers yet? We have some watchers. Come on, man, let's get it in double, triple digits. Let's
that's
go,
right.
people. Like, subscribe.
We've got a couple subscribers. We'd love to pump those numbers up even more because I can only make so many fake email accounts to subscribe with. So we need you
Exactly.
to step in and help out and hit that subscribe button.
User@gmail.com.
You
Don't know. Can only
know,
do that so many times. So many
I
times.
know, right?
Hey, you
I
know, I
was
was reading, I was reading about random stuff this morning.
okay.
And I know we're going to talk about some things, but I found this factoid while I was just reading. Reader's Digest of all places got some good stuff in there apparently. So hey, Reader's
They still
Digest, if you'd
produce
like to
that?
sponsor? I think so. If you want to sponsor Lockbox Lunatics, let us know.
All right.
Subscribe and comment. Did you know that there's 11,000 people have issues with either walking into things or falling into things or hitting things while texting and walking or reading text messages or emails while they're walking? And the reason I found that out is reading a funny story about a realtor that was showing a house and she was on her phone and she walked into the pool with
So
her clients. That's
did
embarrassing.
so what did you walk into that made you want to Google it to find out how many others are doing the same thing that you're doing?
I narrowly avoided a pole walking in Las Vegas with my phone
Oh,
last week. Narrowly avoided a pole. I almost tagged that thing. I stopped probably 2 inches away. I like kind of just my sense. I kind of sensed something and I looked and I was like, oh my gosh! And everybody around me started cracking up. Literally, almost walked into that. That's bad, man. That's not good. I mean, it's not as embarrassing as showing a house though and walking into the pool. That's pretty. I mean, that's a memorable moment though.
oh, it would be, yeah, yeah.
That's pretty crazy though.
You know what
So.
they say, folks that can't, talk and chew gum or walk and chew gum at the same time. What's worse, not being able to walk and chew gum or not being able to walk and text, look at your phone and do something?
Yeah, I know, right? I mean, it's dangerous, dude. I've seen people just walk out in front of cars. They were
Oh
lucky.
yeah.
They were lucky.
Oh
But
yeah.
hey, you brought what? Oh, sorry about that.
No,
I
no.
interrupted you. I
Like
totally
like
cut you off. Just push.
see how you are?
Hmm.
Yeah, I need a moment for my feelings. No. So when you're we'll be driving through the Target parking lot, and I can't believe how many people walk outside of Target on their phone or straight through. They're not even looking to see if any traffic is coming.
They're not even trying to.
No,
They're
they're
just
not.
they're relying on you and your common decency. What if you're texting and driving? That's a
Right.
disaster waiting to happen.
It
We know
is.
that. We know that happens. We know that happens.
It is. So
Well, hey, we were talking about agents a little bit. Brokers in our state, they call them brokers, agents, and
right.
salespeople in your state. We were kind of talking about, and we're going to use this word, it might ruffle some feathers, but lazy agents.
Right.
Kind of what makes a lazy agent versus a good agent versus a great agent. I know we've talked about some of this stuff before, but how do we want to define a lazy agent? How would you define a lazy agent? Because we have both had experiences, I'd say, in the last couple months
Right.
with agents where some crazy stuff has happened when we're in a transaction with folks on the other side. And I'll share my story, and I know you'll share a little bit of yours. But how do you define a lazy agent? What would you say is a lazy agent? Or within your own brokerage, what would you define as a lazy agent? Or even another brokerage, what would you define as a lazy agent?
Well, an agent that relies on others too much to protect their client's best interest. Okay. So that reliance, whether it be on the cross sale agent, whether
Hmm.
that be on their broker to make sure that they're taking care of things, which we're here as a broker to guide. So there's a difference between not having proper guidance as to how to handle the clients and take care of them versus you've been given that guidance and you just choose not to take that advice.
Hmm.
And so I think part of that as a lazy agent is concerned, it's just my time is more valuable than everyone else's time.
Yeah. Well, and I think too, I agree with that. I would say, when I see it, I say it's like you brought up a good point about client representation. It's the training. Are they paying attention to training? Are they taking advantage of the training or just blowing through the training? Do they think it doesn't matter to them? It doesn't apply to them? Like, NA for me, sorry. You know, um, because a lazy agent kind of translates into clients that are not well represented,
Right.
right? I was, there's a deal that recently happened at our brokerage where our clients were able to get their seller, $10,000 in earnest money because the agent on the other side didn't submit his paperwork. Well, there's two parts to the paperwork. The first part, the original offer, part of it was not submitted properly on the compensation side, which meant he was going to get paid nothing, and we were kind of let his transaction coordinator know, like, hey, are you expecting to get paid? Because right now you've got nothing. And then trying to submit an addendum or submitting an addendum with a request on it, which put it into the ball kind of in the seller's court, and then resubmitting a modified addendum a couple days later, kind of like, oh, we changed our mind and now we want to submit this kind of thing. And you can't do that. Ultimately, ended up backing out of the deal, but costing them their $10,000 in earnest money, and it went to our seller, and it was justified with absolutely no pushback from the other brokerage or their managing broker or DP or anything because they were completely in the wrong. So
Yeah.
I would say that's a situation where that literally costs their buyer $10,000. That's crazy.
Yeah. So you're either, chalk that up to being a lazy agent or one that just doesn't have experience or
Yes, yes.
or one that just doesn't care.
I'm gonna kind of like, yeah, I'm gonna say it's probably a combination of things. Um, it's interesting because the agent's been around for a while,
Okay.
but just because a name has been around for a while doesn't equate to expertise, though. It doesn't equate to knowledge or understanding. And so when we talk about that, the lazy interest or the lazy agent means a lot of things, right? But in this case, it actually hurt their client. Like it physically cost their client a lot of money. And so, they weren't operating in the best interest of their client, right? And so if you're an ill informed, not well trained, or lazy agent, you're actually hurting your clients. You're just looking for a payday and for yourself, and you're not in the best interest of your clients, really. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so, when you think about that, how do clients spot a lazy agent?
Yeah, that can be difficult because sometimes these lazy agents are great salespeople. And what I mean by that is they can put up a front, that they're going to go ahead and
Uh huh.
service that client very well. But what you've got to look at is you have to look at past experiences. For instance, I've got an interview tomorrow with a potential seller, and they've got an agent that's willing to discount their compensation.
Okay.
So the conversation is going to be, okay, you've seen my advertising, you've seen my marketing, you've seen me out there in the marketplace. You
Hmm.
you reached out to me and confirmed you saw ads on other properties in close proximity to you and
Right.
confirmed that. How often have you seen that other agent in that capacity? Is going
Exactly.
is going to be
Your marketing efforts and outreach is what caused you kind of was one of the deciding factors in you picking up the phone, right, and calling me to talk to me about it.
right.
So I'd say it's effective.
Right. And so you've got these other agents that are discounted. The other thing is not to knock Dave Ramsey, because he specifically stated, oh, I've got these other agents with, Dave Ramsey. And
Hmm.
Dave Ramsey is great. I'm gonna get myself in trouble here. Dave Ramsey is great for those that are just getting into the financial aspect of taking care of their finances and learning how to budget.
Yeah.
So those that are a little bit more immature or younger, that Dave Ramsey is a great way to start thinking about finances, but he can only take you so far.
Right.
And
Right.
and what I mean by that is to a certain extent, once you get to a point, you're stagnant, right? And
Hmm.
you can't continue to grow that your financial wealth. And you definitely not do it as quickly as one may. But so he specifically pointed these guys out, and the other side of the coin is Dave Ramsey. You have to pay to be in their program, and then
Yeah, I was gonna say,
then
yeah.
you then you also have to give a referral fee, right?
Yep. So
Uh,
we want to like let's let the cat out of the bag on this one a little bit, right? Because you're
right,
bringing up a great point here. And and there's a lot of major companies, big time real estate coaches and a lot of financial names, right? That you go there and they say, "Hey, we have our vetted group of real estate experts. And I mean,
Right.
and let's talk about this a little bit, because you and I have both checked into that. I know I have, and I know you have, because when you first start out in the business, you're like, what a great way
Right.
to get some business my way. And let's be honest, I would say 80% is probably being conservative. At least 80% of them don't really vet out the agents. What they're looking for is who can write us the biggest check every month to be on that list.
Yep.
And the bigger the check that you write to them, the higher you are on that list. And and reason I know that is because I tried it one time and I'm like, wow, you did no vetting. You stuck me out there as a community expert and all this other stuff. I had just started in the business. I was brand new to the business, had very little experience doing any deals. I think I'd only done two or three at the time,
Okay.
but yet I'm a community and real estate expert. Far from it.
Right.
So it's interesting. 9 times out of 10, when you get a local expert that's associated with one of these referral services, they're anything but a local expert.
Right.
They're generally newer agents trying to build their business. It's interesting, right? I
Yeah.
don't know if a lot of people really like ask those companies, what type of vetting do you do for your agents? What type of program or process do you put them through? I will give a shout out to USAA. When I went to join onto their program, you actually have to go back to San Antonio to their corporate offices for 2 days on your own dime and learn about their systems and processes. So they
Oh, okay.
do thoroughly vet you. So I will give them that. I don't know any other companies that I'm aware of, and they may be out there, that actually do that. So that to me, that was the only one where I was like, oh wow, okay, you actually are putting people out there that you know who they are.
Right.
But it's interesting, right? I don't think a lot of people know that. So
No, and realistically, the way my take on that is, if I'm paying for you to refer someone to me, that, taints that referral,
right.
right? And so I think that's a great question to ask, when the client or the consumer is getting these leads, is how much business have they done? Okay.
Hmm.
Because they all have different parameters on what they consider to be a full-time agent, right?
Hmm.
How many deals? And then secondly is how much, are you paying, are you being paid to recommend them? Because
Right.
a paid referral is much different than a referral that's not paid for, because that comes from an entirely different level, right?
Exactly. And I think those are great questions, like you said, for a consumer when they want to know, like, what type of agent am I dealing with? So how many deals have you done? Well, let's say they're a rock star agent. Let's say they're only 8 months into it and they've done 3 or 4 deals, which is good for a new agent, and
Right.
they are really good. So that's a great question to ask. But if you're asking a tenured agent, they might say, "Well, I've done 250 deals, right? I'm 3 years into it, whatever." Those are definitely like numbers you want to pay attention to. But also, how do you decipher between a brand new agent that's hungry too? But they have to be able to kind of look at that. That agent may work harder for you to make sure that, because they're hungry for that sale and they want to get their name out there, than somebody that's been doing it 4 or 5 years. It's going to kind of drop you into their program, right? Depending. So I think those are great questions to ask. But I also think people need to understand, what type of training do you do? How do you stay engaged within the industry? What do you know about the industry? And they can know that by just asking questions or listening to what the agent's saying, like, hey, days on market is this, our absorption rate is here. Prices are kind of averaging this in your specific neighborhood, but we have been seeing, more inventory creeping up. So we want to be price sensitive. If they're kind of throwing those keywords out there and know how to have that conversation, they're probably a pretty well trained agent that knows what they're doing.
Yeah. And that's the thing. If they come to you and they're able to cite, market data and understand and be able to verbalize how that applies to your specific home,
Yeah.
they've at least prepared for that conversation as well. So you definitely and there again, there's a difference between a lazy and a well-trained agent, right?
Yeah.
And so some of these agents don't know what they don't know because no one's told them, right? They've never been
100%.
given guidance. It's that old adage, back in the day you had agents, and it still happens today. They do what the three P's. They put a sign in the yard, they
Hmm.
place the listing in the MLS, and then they hit their knees and pray.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
right?
100%, dude. Yeah,
And
no,
so
100%.
yeah, and that's those things, especially when you have a discounted, a discounted agent who's wanting to discount. There's two things there is one is how much time and energy are they going to focus, and how much are they going to expend on marketing, because they're going
Mhm.
to be making less, their return's going to be much less. Okay. And then, secondly, part of what the seller is going to receive in net proceeds has a direct correlation with the agent. And what I mean by that is
Yes,
if the agent cannot protect his own interest in the form of his paycheck, in the
right.
form of his compensation, how likely is he going to be able to protect that seller and yield him the highest possible on that home? And so if
Yeah,
the very first negotiation that happens is between the home seller and the agent is supposed to be an expert in
right.
negotiations, and they lose that right off the bat,
Yeah, not a good sign, right?
when
Not
they
a good sign.
when they come up against you as an agent, who's going to win?
Right. Oh,
Negotiation
100%.
perspective.
100%. I
Yeah.
think that those are great things for sellers when they're interviewing agents and buyers as well to ask their agent, how you handle different situations. How do you handle stressful situations? Maybe give an example of a recent negotiation you had and how things went, right? Tell me about a really great negotiation where things were smooth and seamless and you got a big win, but tell me when you felt like maybe you got a big loss and what did you do to mitigate that? So I think having conversations where when you're interviewing agent goes beyond just, right, how many deals have you done, right? Start getting into market, like you said, market stats, right? You really should know that stuff. A good agent should be able to just bang that out and say, hey, I check weekly. Here's what we're looking at.
Right.
I mean, I know you and I talked about your market where you're like, hey, it went up to X number and it dropped this much this week. That's interesting to me because it climbed up so fast. Why was there this specific number or drop? That's unusual for a market. Like you're so tuned into your market, like you can understand, hey, there's going to be movement. But when I see movement by a certain number, that makes me want to look behind the scenes. What else is going on to make that big of a movement, right?
Right.
Are people just so it's kind of fascinating when you see things like that to kind of understand what's happening. Like in our marketplace, we're a much smaller marketplace than you by a pretty massive amount. But for whatever reason, homes over $1 million right now are just popping like crazy, which is
Oh yeah.
very unusual for us. Our average home price right now, is about 440,000, and so something over $1 million, is kind of interesting. And when but you want to have somebody that can like dial it in and make sure that they're hitting the local market. So I think that's kind of cool. Those are great questions, right? For somebody to spot a great agent versus kind of a lazy agent and
Yeah.
ask like, and you brought up something great. Are you actively or passively marketing my home? Like you said, are you putting a sign in the ground, putting your name out there and then praying for an outcome? Are you actually going to go out and sell my home? Are you going to take flyers? Maybe do you have a database with people that might be interested? Do you work with other agents and distribute this thing? How do you get the word out there so that people know what's going on, right? So I think those are great things for people to ask. I love marketing plans. So I'm like, are you going to passively or actively market? I love that one. And I think a lot of agents wouldn't really know how to answer that question, which is kind of interesting.
Yeah. And in today's market, you need to have exposure. There we've been both have been in markets where it didn't you had no need to expose the home,
Yep.
right?
Yeah.
As soon as the sign went in the yard and it hit the MLS, people were just flocking to it. There were
Yep.
lines in the yard to get in the house, right?
Yeah.
This is not that market.
No,
we,
no.
we've seen this market before. We've been in the business long
Yep.
enough. We've seen this market before, and we understand the importance of exposure and how to get that out. And when we come up against, home sellers, it's kind of
Mhm.
discouraging, honestly. Whenever we come up with a home seller that doesn't recognize you need to have someone who's going to be exposing your home properly,
Yeah.
and there's more than just going into MLS and relying on the MLS and their syndication to go ahead and market the home. There's
Right.
more
Right.
to that. I took a call yesterday from a gentleman down in Georgia. He's a friend of mine. He's like, "Hey, do you handle this part of Arizona?" No, I don't. Well, he's got a house to sell. Can you still handle it? You know what? Honestly, I wouldn't be doing him any favors because I don't know that
Yeah.
market.
Yep.
My marketing plan, you can pick that up and move that anywhere. But realistically, I don't know that market. So I don't know who that home buyer is that's going to be looking for that house, right?
Yep.
I don't know where they're going to be coming from. We do that here in different segments of houses. I know who to target. I've got pilots pilot groups that, for specific areas. Okay, birds of a feather, right? They flock together. So
Yeah.
if I know an area, they're heavily in, either pilots or CPAs or whatever, I get different groups that I market to. I'll email out those homes. Hey, who do you know? As well as whenever we start running the, our ads, we'll be
Yeah.
targeting that level of buyer. And without having that knowledge to be able to know who to market to, who lives in this area, honestly, I wouldn't be doing him a favor.
Exactly. No, I mean, I had a referral come over. They said, "Hey, Steve, it's just outside of Seattle. Do I have access to that MLS? Absolutely. Can I drive over there and make that happen? It's a couple hours away, 2.5 hours away. Yeah, I can." That being said, I said, "Let me find you an agent over there that I know that can actually work with you because I could take that referral. But like you said, I'm not doing them any favors. I'm not going to best serve them because I don't know the dynamics of each little micro market, if you will, and
Right,
what's happening in that specific area. And that could end up costing my client 10, 20, 30, $40,000. I
right,
might think I'm doing a good job, but am I really doing a good job at that point? No, I'm not representing them because I'm not a local expert for there. And we talk about the overall real estate market in whole as far as the national side of it, and then regionally, and then by state, and then by city, and then by maybe, burbs within that city, right? If it's a
right.
major city, that's where the hyper local side of real estate comes in and being a true local expert, right? That's really where your bread and butter is made by a super well trained hyper local real estate expert. That's who's going to represent you well and get you the best deal on both ends when you're buying and selling. So,
Exactly. Yeah.
right on, man. Well, we covered some good ground today.
Yeah, we did. We did. I appreciate your time and appreciate everyone's time
Hey,
for
yours, dude.
stalking us, honing in, listening to.
Yeah, we need more stalkers. Come on,
We do.
click, subscribe, make it happen. We mean that nicely. We don't mean, don't
Yeah, we
follow
don't mean that in a negative connotation. Make sure that you comment as well, what you like, what you don't like about the podcast. Any suggestions you can give us as far as topic is concerned.
Yep,
We'd love to hear that. There again, please share this with your database. Like and share. We can get the word out. We need your help. We can't do it ourselves. I mean, we're pretty good, but we're not that good. We need your
that's
help.
right.
So
That's right. We don't have to start a GoFundMe page for Lockbox Lunatics.
that's funny. Remember that topic we were talking about, the GoFundMe page for.
Yeah, we were. Right on.
Anyway, all right. Hey, catch you guys next week and look forward to talking to you guys. Take care.